Hi, everyone. You are watching The Self Connection with Ginny Brown and Kelly Pietro, where we have conversations with a group of ascended masters known as the Multitude of the Greater Good.
Thank you for tuning in and watching these videos. I enjoy doing them. And I'm sure Kelly does enjoy the questions because she's the ultimate question asker. So thank you for tuning in. The multitude is a group of ascended masters. They have lived on the earth plane, so they have much information and much experience with things of the earth plane. And they will answer your questions, and they have access to information from the day of creation to the present time, plus whatever it is that you've chosen to accomplish in this lifetime. So when they answer these questions, or specifically your questions, they will answer them based on the totality of you, not just this lifetime, but from the day of creation to this lifetime of all your lifetime experiences. So Kelly, go ahead and let's see what they have to say today.
All right, so I'm going to pick up where we left off in the last one. I think we were talking more about these celestial civilizations, Pleiadians, Lemurians, all that. And then from what I hear and I understand, there were more I don't know if these were ancient civilizations. We're going to get clarity today about uh, Atlantis and Lemuria. Those are two that seem to get floated around a lot. So my first question is, what can the multitude tell us about the truth about, let's go with Lemuria first.
It is important to understand that Lemuria was a creation of being on the earth plane. There are those parts of oneself that say, oh, that wasn't real. That was only a myth. In our estimation, it was an actual continent on the earth plane where people grew and allowed each other to be who they are. In our estimation, it is important to understand that Lemuria was a place of growth and learning and allowing, and each one allowed the other to allow. In our estimation, it is important to understand that that existence could only exist as long as each one allowed each and every other one to be who they are. In our estimation, it is important to understand that when one begins or began to disallow another, to begin to, we'll say, punish or judge or any of those types of behaviors, that Lemuria ceased to be able to exist as the energy was inconsistent with the population of the time. Therefore, Lemuria was no longer able to expand itself, and it created differently. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Okay, so it sounds like the judgment and the punishment and the disallowing of others to be themselves is what may have led to its demise. Where in current day Earth did Lemuria exist?
It is important to understand that many things have changed in current day Earth, and many expanses of land on the Earth plane has also changed. Therefore, it had been, I'm getting eaten up, mutilated, destroyed by many other parts of physical land. Therefore, it no longer exists in our estimation. One can look and look and look. However, one will not find it, as it no longer is in our estimation. If one is asking where it was at the time, it is impossible at this time to point it out, as many things have changed and it's like reversed themselves, and is unable to be pinpointed. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Okay. So I'm interested now in like the society, how it operated, like the pillars of the society. the hallmarks of the society? Because it sounds like it was a really, really long time ago, so very different times. And I guess I'd love to try to relate to it as best we can with what we know. I guess, so the question is like, what are some of the hallmarks of that society?
It is important to understand that when one has freedom to be who they are, it is a limitless society. Each one can move forward in a direction that one pleases, of one's choosing. One is able to move forward in a way of expansion of one's physical self, as well as the expansion of one's energetic self. In our estimation, there were no limitations. No one put any pretenses. No one was unable to move in any direction that another might deem unacceptable. In our estimation, there was much freedom, there was much allowance, there was much energy of love. In our estimation, it is important to understand that as each one moves forward from this place of love and care in this current lifetime, one is able to change the energy in such a way as to make it more conclusive or more conducive to that type of energy on the earth plane. It may or may not ever return to its limitless self. However, as each one allows each oneself the freedom to be who one is and the freedom to allow another to be who one is able to change the energy little by little, bit by bit. And in time, there will be a great deal more love and care on the earth plane than currently.
Okay. Okay, now I've got so many questions. So, sometimes when people talk, like, I guess when they talk about what they think it was probably like, they talk about the civilization being very high tech, a lot of technology, and they talk about psychic abilities and, let's call them, psychic gifts. Were these two aspects that I just mentioned, what is the truth about those existences during the time of Lemuria?
When one is allowed to be who one is on any level, one is able to access themselves in spirit. Therefore, one may call it psychic ability, one may call it knowing, one may call it expansion, whatever it is that one chooses to call it, it is of a limitless part of self, as one is able to connect with oneself without judgment, without like being put down in any way. In our estimation, it is important that you understand when there is an ability to be free, one is free in all directions of being, whether it be on the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. And when one is free on the spiritual, one is free to connect with oneself in the energetic expanse of self as well. Do not be concerned. In our estimation, technology is derived by one's knowing and one's connection with oneself and one's connection with others. And when one on the earth plane is in connection with the ability to expand oneself in such a way as to allow the technical abilities of the all that is to step in, one will allow the expansion of the technological as well. Do not be concerned.
Okay. About how big, like, was the society defined by land, or like we're calling it Lemuria? Was that society defined by land mass or by culture, the people?
It is important to understand there was a land mass at the time, there was a culture at the time, and there was a freedom at the time, which allowed each one to expand oneself. So in our estimation, There was a great deal of land. There was a great deal of energy and energetic self. And there was a great deal of limitless in our estimation. What it is that you are asking cannot be defined in such a way as for you to understand how limitlessness works on the earth plane. In our estimation, it is important that you allow yourself the ability to understand that there is more to one than that which meets the eye. And when one is ready to learn more about oneself, one does. And when it is that one is ready to expand oneself, one does. And when it is that one is ready to move forward, one does. Therefore, it is an impossibility to put a label or a dimension on some of the things that you are asking for. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Yeah, because like I want to ask, like, how big was the land compared, like, would you compare it to the North America today, or but okay, but what came to me as you were channeling that was perhaps they left, were they capable of leaving Earth and traversing to other planets, galaxies, universes?
It is important to understand one left Earth then as one leaves Earth now. It is not a mystery or you know, I
Like an
forget.
astral travel or something,
Yeah, it's not any
the physical.
interdimensional experience.
Okay.
It is important to understand. However, when one leaves, one chooses whether one wishes to return and to where. Therefore, we would highly recommend that you not be concerned about the who, what, where, and when. Just understand that when it's like the living situations changed, and I don't mean physical living, I mean the ability to be who one is. When those experiences changed, there are those who chose not to come back to the earth plane. Therefore, there was no motivation and no energy to move it forward in our estimation. It just dilapidated and disappeared. In our estimation, however, you are asking about what it is that happened to the beings that were present on the earth plane at the time. They returned home, as each one does, and then they bided their time until it was right to come back to the earth plane or any other plane of existence that they chose. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Are there currently Lemurians living on other planets right now?
It is important to understand if one chooses to call one a Lemurian, one would have to allow oneself the ability to understand how all came to be and how all came to, it's like discharge being. In our estimation, there is an incapability of understanding that on the earth plane. However, if one chooses to come to the earth plane, one will choose to come regardless of whether they lived on Lemuria or not.
Or that feels like an incarnation kind of thing, reincarnation. Okay. Wow, that's a lot. Are you processing all of this, Ginny, or not really?
Not, it's, let me put it this way. A lot of it is not important to me
Yeah,
on the level. So I bring through the information, which is nice to know,
yeah.
but it's not a high priority in my current life.
I feel like I'm in my mind, I'm visiting that era and it's interesting. Okay, well, were the beings similar to us today in physicality?
It is important to understand that when one is a human, one is always a human, no matter what time one chooses to come to the earth plane. It is important to understand that one will adapt to the situation in which one is like afforded the ability to experience. Therefore, some may have looked as ones do now. However, most important to understand is that when one adapts to the It's like the landscape, the ability of them around them. There is much that would need to have changed then, as things are quite less expansive or demanding at this time of one's being. Therefore, one cannot look the same. However, one is the same. One is human, and when one is human, one is always human. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Wow, okay, so it gives me like what's that movie? It gives me Avatar vibes. Like I'm assuming that the earth looked similar with similar plants and water and animals, but can they describe the landscape of that time in ways that we can understand?
It is important to understand there have been many changes to the landscape. There have been those unforeseeable instances of it's like landslides and landmass and upheavals and depressions. It is important to understand that although some things were similar, most were not, as they could not have survived in today's time of being and experience.
There's a certain plant that existed back then that still exists today.
There are some, but they are far and few between, and they are not easily found. And if one would find them, they would not understand what they were seeing. Therefore, they keep themselves hidden as to not be,
Destroyed,
yeah, it's like exposed, but it's more like taken advantage of.
exploited, yeah.
Yeah, but there's another word, but that's the feeling of it.
Okay, hang on. I had another question about that. Oh, how many years ago did this civilization exist from
It is
today?
important to understand that um, experience of being on the earth plane existed many, many years before the counting of the beginning of time. There was far more like time experience that has elapsed before one even can comprehend the expansion of time. In our estimation, it does not matter. Just understand that you are living in today, being in today, and your curiousness, your curiosity is quite much appreciated. However, in our estimation, those things of the time are not of a helpful experience and a helpful existence in today's experience. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Okay. I agree, but I'm still gonna press forward because I know our audience is probably interested, or there are people out there that it's actually helpful to hear that. Like, don't worry about that. Live in the here and now because that's what you're here for. So, but I know for me, sometimes hearing about it puts my curiosity at rest so that I can be more present.
Okay.
And perhaps there's others out there too. So I don't know that I have any more questions about Lemuria. I'm sure our viewers will, and you guys can submit your questions. There's a link in the description box on YouTube. But I'm going to move into Atlantis now.
Okay.
Okay, so did did the time of Atlantis and the time of Lemuria exist together at the same time?
It is important to understand that they could not have existed together, as the intellectual observance of each one was quite different. when Atlantis came to be, it was understood that there would be problems, that there would be inconsistencies of being, that there would be objections and objectionable behavior. However, in our estimation, it was quite a wonderful time, regardless. It is important to understand, however, Atlantis had a reason for being. It is that part of history or society that allowed one to expand oneself not only on the knowing and emotional level, but to allow one to help others learn who they are. In our estimation, Atlantis was quite a beautiful place to live. There were many who decided, oh, I'll just go and I'll have a good time and I'll just live my life. And then there are many who decided that they were there to learn, that they were to expand themselves, that they were able to allow themselves to move forward. In our estimation, Atlantis was quite different from Lemuria, as each one was able to not only be more of who they were, but to allow themselves the ability to move in a direction, a precise direction of being. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Okay. So I'm assuming then that Atlantis was part of the Earth plane. Is that a correct assumption?
It is important to understand that Atlantis definitely was part of the Earth plane. However, it is the same with Lemuria. We cannot tell you where it was, as it has been, it's like, what I want to say, dissolved and reincarnated and dissolved and reincarnated many times. Therefore, it is no longer in a place of description. Do not be concerned.
Did Atlantis come before or after Lemuria?
It is important to understand Atlantis could not become before Lemuria, as Lemuria was the beginning point of the dissatisfaction, and therefore it needed to be in process before Atlantis could be born. Do not be concerned.
And that makes sense to me from like honestly, from like a chakra development standpoint, like think of like, I don't want to say primitive because it doesn't sound like they're very.
It is important to understand, my dear, the chakras are quite an evolved mechanism. And whether or not you lived in Lemuria, Atlantis, or the current times, the chakras always were and always will be, as they are an energetic component of a person rather than a physical one.
Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like Lemuria was like this free state of being, and Atlantis was like evolved out of that as a little bit more restrictive. Um, yeah, again, like I'm thinking of the chakras where like the root chakra is all about the self and self-preservation, but also like like how you are on the earth, just yourself, where the second chakra, I think of like in relationship. And they kind of talked about um, Atlantis being a place where you now helped each other. And so I think about relationship. Um,
It is important to understand that there are many ways of looking at the chakra system. However, your interpretation is only one interpretation. In our estimation, it does not matter what labels that are given to a chakra, as there is only a label. In our estimation, there is much more involved than the simplicity of the root chakra being a connection to the earth plane.
yeah, for sure.
There's a great deal more involved in the root chakra. Therefore, the labels given to it on the earth plane are quite simplistic indeed.
Ooh, maybe we'll do a series on the chakras.
That would be good.
I'm gonna take a note of that. Like 1 episode per chakra. Okay, so going back to Atlantis.
Will not need 1 episode per chakra. 1 episode to encompass all of the chakras. Chakras would be quite again, implicit indeed.
Okay. Implicit. Interesting choice of words. Okay, so I'm going to stick with Atlantis for a little bit more. I think when people think of Atlantis, they think of a culture that lived underwater. Is there any truth to that?
It is important to understand that a human could not exist underwater, therefore it is a fallacy.
Okay, good. Let's get that out of the way. Okay, so well, so like we talked about Lemuria, I think people think of those two civilizations similarly, like they were high tech, using crystals as technology and very intuitive as well. Would you say Atlantis that those were pillars of that society as well?
It is important to understand if one chooses to label them in such a way, it's a possibility. However, in our estimation, it does not matter. The energy of the earth plane is all that is required for a human to be on the earth plane. When one chooses to look deeper as to how the energy experiences itself, one is able to understand that it does what it is that it needs to do. And if a human can believe that they have harnessed that energy, they are quite well mistaken. In our estimation, the energy produced during Atlanta times was that which was required at the time to move civilization forward. We would highly recommend that one not be concerned about the hows, the whats, the wheres, and the whys. Just understand that it was required in order to allow itself to grow. Do not be concerned.
Okay, so what were some of the hallmarks of the Atlantis culture and society?
It is important to understand that when one lived in Atlantis, one was for the most part quite free and capable to expand themselves. Therefore, they were able to move themselves along differently. We would highly recommend that when one decides that it is worth living, one chooses the best place for one to be like incorporated or not even incarnated, but incorporated into the system of being. However, Atlantis does not have that ability, that sense of being or understanding. It does have, however, the ability to allow itself to be a better self. Therefore, as time went on and inhabitants flourished in who they are, then the choices were made as to who one was and how one was to be. In our estimation, it is right that one understands Atlantis did exist. It had its capabilities, it had its reasons for being, and it had its reasons for leaving. Do not be concerned, all is love. Now, most of that made no sense to me.
Um, some of what I wonder if that I got, I don't know if I got it accurately, was like there was freedom, but not as much as Lemuria. And I kind of went off as you were channeling on one topic and digesting it while you kept channeling. So I think I missed some of it. But I wondered if it was like felt kind of like family decided your fate, but I don't know.
It is important to understand there was much freedom. There was far more freedom than you have today. In our estimation, one could be who they were, and it was like no big deal, so to speak. One could be quite a gifted psychic, so to speak, or quite gifted in one's knowing or understanding, and it would just feel normal. In our estimation, there was a great deal that was accepted then that is not accepted now.
Okay, so I didn't ask this for Lemuria, but if they could answer for both, how long did those civilizations last for? Like how many years?
In our estimation, it is important to understand that those existences were not measured in years, they were measured in growth. Therefore, we could not tell you how many years, as time is and was not an issue.
Oh, oh. Does that mean that the humans of the time did not measure it, so therefore we can't measure it? Or is there something more about that that we can't comprehend right now?
It is important to understand that as one continues to grow and to be, one is able to allow oneself to assimilate to any time frame in the way that they know how. And in our estimation, the time of the time was not important. Therefore, there was and is no way to measure it. Therefore, we would highly recommend that one not try, as one is incapable of being in that type of environment and understanding of how it was. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Okay, so what led to the demise of Atlantis?
It is important to understand that as each one was able to allow each one to be, one chose to live differently. One chose to experience more. One chose to grow differently. One chose to understand more. Therefore, one could not find those experiences on Atlantis and chose to move forward differently. In our estimation, it is important for you to understand that Atlantis was on the earth plane, as one might choose to call it, for eons of being. Therefore, when one was ready to make the change, there were many on other areas of being that one was able to experience. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Wow. So it kind of feels like the souls who incarnated during the time of Lemuria and Atlantis, like the souls outgrew those experiences. And because of that collective outgrowing of those experiences, the physical aspects just kind of withered away because no one was reincarnating into those experiences. I guess it's like epochs of time, right? Like it probably just changed. It wasn't Atlantis anymore. It's not like it got wiped away by a flood or it just civilization changed and we might not call it Atlantis anymore because that was like an epoch of time. Am I saying that right? Epoch?
My, my impression is that you're right in such a way, but also the earth changed in so many ways from what they've been saying. It's
Yeah.
impossible to find it because it no longer exists.
Interesting.
We would
Okay.
highly recommend, my dear, that you not be so concerned about what was then and allow yourself to understand that there are many lifetimes that each of you have lived between then and now, and your experience has helped you grow and grow and grow, and you are continuing to grow and learn and expand. Do not be concerned. When the time is right, the time is right. And when one is able to expand one's energy of being, one does. In our estimation, it is important for you to understand that what was then no longer is, as it has expanded itself and its capability quite beautifully. In our estimation, there is nothing more to learn from the experience of Atlantis or Lemuria, as the presence on the earth plane has graduated to a bigger, stronger, and allowable energy than ever was there. In our estimation, the difference was in one's capabilities of expanding themselves on the energetic level. Therefore, there are those on the earth plane who are quite capable of expanding themselves energetically. And then there are those on the earth plane who have come to expand themselves differently and soon will be able to see that energetically is quite a wonderful expansion to experience. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Okay, so it just feels like, especially in like New Age spirituality, the humans of today seem to be so enamored by these ancient civilizations and almost nostalgic for them.
Mhm.
Why is that?
It is important to understand that nostalgia is part and parcel due to the fact that they knew of the freedom of being that they no longer have or experience in this lifetime. When one puts such pressure on themselves and each other to be perfect, one cannot be who one is. One is able to allow oneself to experience the expectations. However, one cannot always experience who one is under expectations of being. Therefore, we would highly recommend that each one allow themselves to connect with themselves. And when they are able to connect with that part of themselves that is in spirit as well, and allow their knowing to grow and expand, they will allow themselves the freedom that they are seeking. Do not be concerned, all is love.
It's so interesting, Ginny, as we're talking about this, that pain that I was feeling before we hit record is coming back. And I don't know if I'm just in resonance. So before Ginny and I started recording, I was feeling this headache and we were doing a little bit of work around it. I get this a lot. I think it's come up on this YouTube channel a few times. This sinus pain and she channeled a message for me about judgment. Like it has to do with fear of judgment. And I think about perhaps it's me tuning into the energy that you're bringing through from those timelines of like Lemuria was this judgment-free zone. Everyone got to do whatever they want, this freedom. And Atlantis, it feels like not you're free, but there's a little bit more there. And so yeah, like perhaps my own nostalgia for wow, that sounds like an amazing time period. But I think what they're saying is, but we've evolved actually. Like we're romanticizing that, but we're leaving behind or we're forgetting to acknowledge that yes, there were aspects of good, but we've actually evolved into maybe something better today.
Well, I think so, but I think the word that came to me too when you were talking was, and they said was expectations. So you have expectations of others, you have expectations of yourself. And if you can't meet them, then there's a lot of pressure for that. And that leads to judgment and all of those other things that can be what I'm kind of seeing or feeling is like this big pressure, like a big slab of cement coming down on me that I can't move, I can't do anything because that pressure is so great that it inhibits me.
It's interesting that you're using the word pressure because that's exactly what it feels like. Pressure. Wow. Yeah, so I guess maybe the a good takeaway is like to heal the pressure and to evolve out of expectation a bit. Societal expectations, expectations of yourself. I don't know, do they have a message, like a, because I think I've asked everything about the civilizations unless you have something, Ginny.
And I would just say expectations and judgments are really, in my opinion, very related to the pressures of being that we put on ourselves. It's about judging ourselves and expecting certain things of ourselves. It's not always bad to expect certain things, but when it gets to the point where it becomes a pressure that one can't function clearly under, and it can only be just a little bit that you have trouble keeping up with life because you got so many things going on, it's putting on a lot of pressure. It doesn't have to be major. It can be a lot of minor things or a minor thing, whatever it is. I think that has a bit to do with it. And you wanted a message on what?
I guess, I don't know. I don't know. I was gonna say closing message, but it feels like there might be some healing in this conversation. Perhaps, because I think what they said was a lot of people who are here on the earth plane now probably lived lifetimes in Lemuria and Atlantis, and perhaps there's a healing message for those souls who are tuning in and feeling a resonance with this content.
So when you said that there were a lot of people living now who lived during those lifetimes, and I got, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It is important to understand that when one lived in those lifetimes, they chose to experience those lifetimes. They chose to allow themselves to move forward in such a way, and they chose to experience the growth required to move forward. And it is important to understand that when one lives in this lifetime, one chose to experience this lifetime. One chose to come to experience the learning and the growing and the understanding that one could not attain during those lifetimes. Therefore, one chooses to move oneself along in the way one requires. In our estimation, it is important for each one to understand that during a lifetime, one learns a great deal. One learns how to experience oneself differently, and one learns how to move oneself forward differently. In our estimation, we would highly recommend that each one be kind to each one's own self, therefore allowing themselves to be kind to others and allowing the growth that one has come to attain in this lifetime to be attained. It is not a negative. It is not a positive. It is just where you are, when you are. Do not be concerned. All is love.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Okay, good.
So nothing else they want to add about this content and these civilizations. I feel like, I don't know, did we cover everything they wanted us to know?
It is important to understand that each one comes to the earth plane with the knowing that they have attained in each of their lifetimes experiences. And as each one moves forward within those lifetimes, they experience more, attain more, and acquire more and more knowledge of being. If it is that one is interested in expanding one way or another on the earth plane, it is quite possible. But if it is that one chooses to stay exactly where they are, that is also quite possible. It is also important to understand that as one, oh, excuse me, I don't know what that's about. As one allows oneself the growth required to allow oneself, one allows the ability to expand in many ways, some on the physical level and some on every other level of being. Therefore, expanding themselves and the all that is, do not be concerned. When one allows oneself to be who one is, that is all that is required. In our estimation, it is quite a beautiful experience indeed. Do not be concerned, all is love. We would also like you to understand that as you continue to move yourselves forward, you continue to move each and every other one forward. As energy is energy is energy. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Beautiful.
There you go.
All right, well, I think that's a good place to end.
Yes, we covered a lot more with that than I thought we would.
Yeah, me too. I wasn't really sure what questions I was gonna ask. I just, see kind of what came up. But
Right.
hopefully
That,
that's satisfied.
that seems to be how it works with them. You have one question or you think you don't have any, and you stop and you take a breath and you just be for a minute, and then you find the questions do come.
Yeah, for sure. It's
So
good to just
go
talk
ahead.
I just like having the topic and then like seeing where we go from there.
Yeah, with life.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking your questions, Kelly.
Thanks for channeling, Ginny.
You're
And
welcome.
thanks to the multitude for imparting their great wisdom on us.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.